I have taken my notes on the game, and they're right here. But Greg, of course, we start with you because you're our Nebraska expert. So, man, if you could list off what went wrong in this one, where would you start?
Oh, that's a hard question. Start right out of the gate with that one, huh? No, I don't know. I'm at a loss because, everything that we talked about leading up to the season, all the changes that were going to be made. And I think what we saw is the same old song and dance again. It didn't look like much change to me. Besides, a defense that was playing at a pretty high level, and just the mistakes happened again. The special teams were just incredibly horrible. And, we talked about an identity of a downhill running game that we just didn't see any of that even come to fruition. And yeah, it was just it was an odd day. I mean, it wasn't, I shouldn't say odd, but it was just like a familiar scene that we've seen just year in and year out lately. And you can make all the excuses you can, but I just it's bizarre. It really is bizarre, and hopefully they can right the ship after this and get pointed back in that direction that they were hoping to be in. And unfortunately now you're 0-1, and you've lost a conference game on top of that, and you've crushed any kind of this momentum that we had going into the season. And yeah, it's time to man up now, and to see what you can do moving forward.
JoJo Doman, the the linebacker, I guess he plays a special spot, but he said on his podcast, The Beat, that's actually powered by Husker Online, he said that he thought Nebraska, they had found so many ways to lose that they just had to find a way to win. He said that before the season. Well, of course, I think they found some new ways to lose, which is really interesting. But you think statistically they would have to find a way to win, right? So I'm with Greg. It was pretty brutal and kind of mind-blowing how some of these mistakes keep on happening after they put so much emphasis on it, especially that special teams. They talked about it literally every single day. We had a press conference in the fall and the spring, and yet it still looked just as bad or maybe even worse than it had before. So I think this Fordham game, it's going to be really important for them to create just a little bit of confidence and some sort of mojo and have a little bit more room for error.
I guess on the good side, they get to play Fordham this week to work on what they need to work on. So that's the good side is, okay, we get a breather. We're so much better than this team. Not that they should approach it like that, but you know what I mean in regards to this type of game to fix some things before we dive back into it at a higher level. But on the downside, from the public perception standpoint, they really can't do anything right this Saturday. It doesn't matter what the score is, doesn't matter what they do. They're going to have to make amends later in the season, because if they beat Fordham by 20, if they beat them by 50, if they beat them by 100, people aren't going to be satisfied because it's a game against Fordham. But if they can block out the noise, not care what anybody has to say, this may be a good thing for them to take on a team that they can work on some things, look at the film and say, we did X, Y, and Z wrong, and now let's go out there this week and work on those things. But I guess the three things that come to mind in terms of mistakes, Abby, as you lay it out there, the Cam Taylor-Britt catch at the half-yard line on a punt is just classic. No, you don't do that. That was a disaster, a debacle, and then throwing the ball and the whole deal, and then it turns into the first points of the season in college football. And then the other ones, just because, again, we've seen it so many times, Adrian Martinez coughing up the ball at a point where I think we had a 9-9 game. Yeah, it was 9-9. Mm-hmm. And you were thinking at that point, okay, are they going to sit on it? Or no, they've got plenty of time. They got 50 seconds to a minute, something in that range to do something. So they're going to do something. Didn't protect the football. And it just perfectly bounced up for the defender to scoop up and score. And then, of course, there were 2 plays. Well, it was the interception. The interception when they were up by a touchdown would have had great field position at the 35-yard line. The personal foul wipes out the interception, plus they get tacked on the other 15-yarder, and it becomes from you're up 9-2 with the ball in great possession to go up by 2 scores to they practically gain a football field and penalty yardage to go ahead and tie the game. Just, yeah, mistakes upon mistakes.
The whole thing just festered. I mean, it just grew like a cancer. Once the mistakes started, they just didn't stop. And, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you're going to go in and probably take the lead at halftime. And then all of a sudden you're down 15-9. And then you give Illinois a huge time chunking drive to wipe out pretty much the whole third quarter to start the game off and really or start the second half off and dictate the rest of the way that game went. And, yeah, those were just costly mistakes. I mean, the Caleb Tanner penalty was just something that should never happen. Cost his team. Yeah, I mean, celebrate. Great, yeah, but don't celebrate like you did and cost your team after a great play. And we saw things like that. Cam Taylor Britt's punt return, he knows better than that. You know, the punt before that, I think Oliver Martin was the one out there, and he was parked on the 8-yard line, and that thing was going over his head, and he just started walking away from it. But Cam, for some reason, I think just in his head, he wants to make a play, and it just kind of lost his thought process on that. And, yeah, it's the heat of the moment type of thing, but that really changed the whole momentum of the game. And it just, like I said, it just mushroomed from there, and it's so hard to come back from that. And the special team, you missed 2 extra points. Yeah, you put yourself in such a hole, and you know you're coming back from that too. And I'm not trying to blame Connor Culp for anything, but you know they score to make it a 1-score game, and he misses an extra point, and all of a sudden now you got to get 8 instead of trying to tie the game with a minute left when you finally get the ball back. And I don't know. It's so bizarre. And the thing to me is that I just don't understand why. And we got highlights rolling right now on Big Red Wrap Up. You know, Abby and I, our boss, Sean Callahan, is one of the hosts on the show. And I have this rolling right now while I'm trying to talk, and I'm watching it. And it was just so many little things that you think that you've gotten worked out. And I don't know. I don't know. You got to be on the same page. And I think the biggest key that we heard today, too, is that it's Tuesday now. Put this behind you. Now you move on to Fordham, and you get ready, and you go out there and you work on those things that hurt you and cost you a ball game last weekend.
They always talk about how they're shaking off the last game and focusing on the first game, but I wonder if they need to put more emphasis on shaking off the last play, because they have those big plays like Caleb Tanner. It cost them 30 yards, and then they, you know, then they let them just march right into the end zone. Like, they need to focus more on being able to move on past what happened in the game, because they had these mistakes, and then they let them kind of just like ruin the whole game, if that makes sense.